Hello again, I am Fluff, back in War Thunder with a few observations about the Lavochkins and their introduction and of course their fixing, now that most of the vitriol is out of the way and the forums are back to simmering in the way they usually do. You'll probably notice the video here doesn't actually have me piloting a Lavochkin fighter. This is because I haven't taken very well to them. I much prefer my 9T. But I think what I will be showing you mostly is some Stuka dogfighting, because I got in my Ju-87D5, it's got a pair of 20mm cannons on the front, and I found that it was quite the troll plane. Onto the Lavochkins then. So, patch 1.31 came out, the forums shortly afterwards exploded, we saw Ram JB's long host, and there was a fix shortly afterwards. The really big thing, and the thing that got fixed, was that the Lavochkins had a busted rate of climb. They were space shuttles, essentially. You pointed up, hit web, and you went, and you were just able to keep going. That is no longer the case, but there are still a lot of complaints. Some are more reasonably voiced than others, and I believe a couple of the ones I've seen are valid. The first being that the tiering for the Lavochkins does seem a bit funky, especially when compared with the other nations, where you've got, thinking of the Germans off the top of my head, you've got the Lavochkin 5 is equivalent to the G2 and the Focke-Wulf A5, I think. It just seems a little bit weird to me. If this is a case of they're jumbling around the various tierings of the planes, beta being beta, until all of the planes are in, then I can dig that, but otherwise I would think it needs a look. I've seen the suggestion made that perhaps Gaijin should consider the date that the aircraft was introduced to fight as a criteria for what tier it is, and I think maybe that's the way to go, but we'll see. The other point I think is valid is that the Lavochkin performance at high altitude seems to be a little bit too generous, considering they were low to medium altitude fighters as far as I can tell. That's where they were better at historically, and currently competent pilots are having unwarranted amounts of difficulty dealing with Lavochkins at high altitude when they are in a high altitude fighter themselves. In short, the Lavochkins aren't being penalised enough for leaving the area they're best at. And of course that's going to have a skewing effect on gameplay. Down low they really should be absolutely nasty buggers for you to fight, but up high, less so. Other points that I've seen people making I haven't been so convinced of, so I will leave it there. Now, with the forums around the time of the patch and the fix just being very flamey and uncomfortable to peruse for any length of time, I looked for alternate sources of information, and someone pointed me to the War Thunder subreddit, where Batidari, one of the Gaijin team, was fielding questions. And he threw light on quite a few things, so if you're interested in that as well, I will put a link in the description so you can go and see what the discussion was like. Some of the things he brought up were the lack of feedback. The testers evidently didn't bring up the issue with the Lavochkins in the slightest. There was no real forum posting about it, there were no bug reports or anything like that. And I feel perhaps then the testers let us down a little bit in that respect, because as a tester that's what you're meant to be there for. You're looking for stuff that the devs have managed to let slip through the net. You know, they can't catch everything, and that's what you're hopefully going to pick up on. Equally, I suppose the testers could have missed it themselves as well, so no blame attaches maybe. A bigger issue that I currently see is the way people are presenting their complaints when they do present their complaints on the forums. Taking lots of recent Lavochkin posts as my examples, these are showing a real tendency to be invariably anecdotal. Even Ram's post was a long rant, and it can feel good and it can gain attention, but it doesn't bring solid stuff to the table. Now in his case I expect he accompanied that with a video, in which case the point would be muted, less so for the multitude of other forum posts. What I am seeing is that the posts are wrapped up in raving and insults, personal attacks and so on. Not constructive in the slightest. No one with influence who reads that is going to pay any real attention to it. For one thing, I'm sure It's going to put them in a bad mood. The other thing is, moderators, game masters are going to see these threads, they're going to lock them, possibly even delete them. It's a great way to gain no traction whatsoever, but to get yourself marked and ignored very quickly. What hasn't cropped up with any real strength at all is posts with numbers, explanations, even better, videos demonstrating the stuff that these guys are not content with. I only recall seeing around the time of the fix, shortly before, a couple of posts that were actually constructive in the way that they took a comparison of rates of climb of the Lavochkins versus other fighters to show that the Lavochkins were just totally out there in terms of their climb rate. That was useful, but there were only one or two of those posts, and they quickly got buried under the Russia OP, devs biased, and all that kind of dross. So the genuine feedback got absolutely buried under the avalanche of rage. In short, what we could really do with here is a real emphasis on the empirical approach, as well as using the right channels of communication in the right way. Instead of writing big ranty posts about everyone sucking because this is OP, it would be far more productive to grab a few people and go into a custom game and test these things out, preferably record them or at least make notes, and come back with the figures you find, make a report with a post on the forum, and provide feedback like a bug report or something that can actually get to the devs that they can do something with and is actually of utility to them. If all you're doing is providing anecdotal complaints with insults attached, it's going to get ignored as noise rather than anything that can be used, and that's the big thing. Now on my end, I intend to get a little bit more involved in taking a look at changes that are coming up and evaluating them. It's not a huge deal to see a change being mentioned and test it a few times on the dev server or whatever, and then say, actually no, this doesn't work because X, Y and Z, and here are the numbers. I would hope there are far more experienced simmers already in there doing that, and I have every faith in those guys' ability to help the Gaijin team produce a better product. Now though, I think the core point is if you're going to post something on the forums relating to balance, especially in terms of the planes, it needs to be backed up with some kind of evidence, otherwise it's just useless. That will be all from me for now however, so thanks for watching, have fun in the skies, and of course, take care.